or by mail, attention planning director, prior to the meeting. All correspondence received prior to the meeting will be read and entered into the record. That being said, Tom, it is 7:04 on Tuesday, April 14th, 2020, and I'd like to call the meeting to order. Tom, are we doing a Pledge of Allegiance? I don't have a flag at my house, at least outside the house. Tom?
Skip the pledge if you feel that that's.
Dan, what?
I've got one if you'd like to look here.
I have one if you want.
If you have one, we'll stand.
Okay.
Pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Flag.
of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Tom, we'll move to the next item of the agenda. Would you please call the roll for tonight's meeting?
Yes, Sharon Mayer,
Present.
Stuart Friedman,
Present.
Daniel Buxa,
Present.
Jonathan Peterson. Jonathan Peterson
Present. Here.
and Chairman Raffin.
Present. Seeing that we have a quorum, we'll move on to the approval of minutes from March 10th, 2020. Has everyone had a chance to review the meeting minutes from that day? And if so, what's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I have reviewed the minutes and I find them to be in order, so I'll move to accept the minutes.
We have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I have a comment.
Okay.
In the members in attendance, Stuart was acting as chairman for that meeting, so maybe that should be corrected.
That's a good point. I'd forgotten about that.
Okay, so in the member attendance, Tom, could you adjust it for Mr. Freeman as an acting chairman of that meeting? And if so, is there a amendment to the motion?
I was at the meeting too, so that needs to be corrected too.
So Dr. Coltritis was at the meeting. I'm trying to get everyone's voices here. And
Yes.
the adjustment is also Mr. Freeman is the chairman. Tom, did you make those corrections?
Roland, it's Dave Wickland. Roland, it's Dave Wickland. I'm here
Yes.
now.
Okay, great. Thank you. So, Mr. Freeman, would you, is that motion okay with those corrections then?
Mr. Chairman, I accept the corrections to the minutes.
Do we have a second to the corrected minutes?
I'll second.
Ms. Mayer, any discussion? If not, Tom, please call roll.
Tom's having audio problems.
Is he? Tom, can you hear me? I figured it's better off, obviously, be awfully hard to say aye or nay, because I don't know whose voices are whose with who's in the meeting. So it's better, I think, we call roll for any and all votes.
Agreed.
Is Dustin on? Maybe Dustin can record the roll call. I'm going to check to see if Tom's texting me at all.
Try now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Tom.
Okay.
Did you get the two corrections on the motion regarding Dr. Coltritis was at the meeting and Mr. Freeman was the chairman of the meeting?
Yes, we got those corrections.
Okay. If so, would you call roll for approval of the minutes, please?
Sharon Mayer,
Yes.
Stuart Friedman,
Yes.
Daniel Buxa,
Yes.
Roland Raffin,
Yes.
Jonathan Peterson.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries.
Next item on the agenda is a preliminary hearing. That is BZA docket 20-004, Libro Inc. Mr. Tony Hannis requesting a conditional use permit for a restaurant with outdoor dining in a CD4, a district in order to operate an outdoor dining area at 313 Ridge Road. Tom, would you give us a little presentation on this before we bring the petitioner or ask the petitioner to speak?
Yes, I'd be happy to. And Dustin, if you can pull up the report on the screen share. The petitioner in this instance is Libro Inc. Not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And Tony Hannis. The background is that this project originated at the 313 Tap Room, which was opened last winter, late last year. And during the planning, actually, for the remodel of the building, they had presented plans to our site plan review committee for an outdoor dining area. At the time, we kind of told them what we expected to see in terms of security and those types of things, but we asked them to hold off on applying for a conditional use permit or special use permit, what it was previously known as, because we were in the middle of passing our zoning ordinance and we weren't sure exactly if the standards would change. So since then, they've approached the town and have asked if they can open up the outdoor dining area, which has already been constructed, to the public. And we instructed them to put together a conditional use application. So you can see the site in question is shown on this first page here of the report. It's the 313 Tap Room. It's located at 313 Ridge Road. To the north is a parking lot in a residential area. To the east is a Citgo gas station. To the west is a vacant lot and a law office. And then to the south is the Ridgewood Plaza, which is where Applebee's and those various other stores are located. If you can kind of go down to the next page, Dustin. Generally speaking, sort of an analysis of this petition, typically in the past when these special uses or conditional uses, as we now call them, have been presented to the board, there's been some questions about safety, access, and the impact of a noise on adjacent properties. With respect to safety, we know that the outdoor area will be located approximately 70 feet from Ridge Road. So from a traffic standpoint, there's no real potential for, somebody like a car to run off the road and hit a patron. In terms of access, they have fenced off this area. It will only be accessible via the building. And there is sort of an emergency access gate on the north end, which was requested by our fire department and police department. So in the event of an emergency, people can exit out of the patio without going back to the building. But generally speaking, it's not open. And then I'll also note that the property is adjacent, from a noise perspective, it's adjacent to a gas station. No real conflicts there. There is a residential development or residential neighborhood to the north. It's about 150 feet away, and the location of the patio is kind of tucked away east of the building. So the noise impacts we estimate will be minimal. At this point, I think I would hand it over to the petitioner to maybe kind of go through their thoughts as far as how they're to comply with some of our criteria regarding conditional uses.
Okay, I
I
see
believe
Mr.
Tony and Mark are on the call here.
Mr. Forright, Mr. Hannes, would you like to give a little presentation on what you're trying to do at 313 Tap Room?
Yeah, this is Tony Hannis. I could start if that's all right.
Sure.
Mark. Yeah, Tom ran through it went through everything pretty much the way I was going to explain it. They'd have to come in. We're just looking for an outdoor space. The space itself is completely on our property, just for overflow for people to be able to sit out during the warm times and everything like that. Just enjoy some outdoor space in Munster here. As he mentioned, you have to come through the building in order to access the outdoor space. There is an emergency exit on the north side in order to get out. But otherwise, that being said, that's pretty much everything that's on there. It's just going to be a nice outdoor space for everybody to enjoy, and especially in these conditions right now. Yeah, there's some pictures there. I'm at the building right now. If anybody needed I thought it might be a good idea since we're via live here on camera. If anybody had any questions, I can kind of show them how it works. But that's the layout right there, and you can see it's right on the side of the building. It's tucked next to the Citco there, so noise level will be. I mean, it's only the gas station right next to us, so it's tucked in right there. I don't know if Mark, you had anything else to add?
We're going to have nice seating, flowers, some lighting outside, and it should be a nice outdoor space. Should add to the likability of Munster in that sense.
Mr. Forright, Mr. Hannes, quick question. Hours of operation for the outdoor seating?
24/7, Mr. Rapp.
Yeah, right now our hours are during the week. We're open till the latest we go is midnight right now. So typically we open at 4 to 11 during the week and 12 to 12 on the weekends.
Perfect. Any other things you want to bring up during this, or I'll open up to some questions from the commission?
No, any questions, be welcomed.
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Yes, Ms. Mayor.
So will the outdoor space, it looks like there's like, is it like stone or what's on the ground there?
Pea gravel, Sharon.
And is that going to remain, or are you pouring concrete there, or what's happening?
That was our intent, was to keep pea gravel. We did not want a sterile concrete space. So that whole patio has been cleared, leveled, compacted, and the top coat is about 1.5 inches of pea gravel that was brought in.
Okay. Are you going to serve food out there?
People will be able to eat food out there. You order inside. We don't have wait service, so you order at the bar or at our point of sale, and then our staff brings the food out to you. So yes, people would be able to eat outside. We'll have garbage receptacles out there to make sure that there's no littering. But yeah, there will be food that's produced inside the building that can be brought out to be consumed.
Mr. Buxa has his hand up.
Mr. Buxa?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I note that's next to the Citgo station. I noted in the staff report that there are no safety concerns, but I'm just curious if there are any concerns about trucks are offloading their gas into the tank, or just people are pumping gas and the fumes coming on over into the dining area.
I think where they actually pump the gas is it's actually farther to the east end of the gas station. Some of the pumps are right here. Are you talking about individuals pumping, or when they come in with a big tanker?
Both.
Okay. We are
significant distance away from there. We're also elevated slightly from the level of the gas station. And then as far as the tankers come in, they're farther on the east side where they actually drop in and pour the gas in.
They tend to fill up from the Manor Street side of the property, so on the east border.
And Mr. Buxa, I stopped there a couple times to walk through it. It's a fair distance away from the pumps to the fence that they already have installed. And the fence is tall enough. It's a tall privacy fence that kind of block the look of the gas station. So you're kind of in your own, element, like being in someone's backyard. It's kind of a nice sprinkle kind of spot.
More about the gas fumes.
Yeah, the gas is far away, and I hope we never have a gas problem at any of our stations in Munster. Does anyone else have any questions for the petitioner?
I do.
Ms. Mayor?
Will you have live music out on the patio area?
We've talked about it. If we did, it would not be amplified loud music. It would be acoustic, so as to not disturb. I mean, the neighbors are a fairly significant distance away, but it's our hope to have, if we have music, for it to be acoustic in nature and not electronically amplified.
Okay.
Roland, Mr. Raffin, I've got a question.
Yes, Mr. Peterson.
For the petitioners, I'm looking at your website. I think it's your website, 313taproom.com. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And that menu correctly represents what you're planning on serving here and that sort of thing, correct?
On food-wise, you're asking?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're actually going to expound on that a little bit. We're taking our time off right now to add to that menu right now. So we're going to be adding some sandwiches and some salads and stuff like that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for the petitioner?
Mr. Chairman, if there are no other questions, I'm prepared for a motion.
We have a motion to set this for public hearing by Mr. Buxa. Do we have a second?
I will second that motion. Mr. Friedman.
Mr. Freeman seconds it. Any other discussion? Tom, would you please call roll?
Sharon Mayer,
Yes.
Stuart Friedman,
Yes.
Daniel Buxa,
Yes.
Jonathan Peterson,
Yes.
Chairman Raffin.
Yes. Tom, will you work with the petitioners and make sure all the public hearing requirements are set so we can proceed for next month's meeting?
Yes.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you guys very much.
Greatly appreciated. Stay safe.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is a public hearing. It's BZ 19-009, Guy Costanza. In the agenda, it's noted that the applicant has requested a continuance. Tom, should we make a motion to table this the next month's meeting again?
Yes, I would suggest you do that. I received communication from Guy Costanza that he would prefer to wait for an in-person meeting than to try to do this via Zoom.
Okay, great. That being said, what's the
Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Buxa.
Make a motion to continue to the next meeting.
Mr. Buxa makes a motion to continue. Do we have a second?
I will gladly second that motion.
Mr. Freeman seconds it. Any discussion on tabling this matter? If not, Tom, would you please call roll?
Sharon Mayer,
Yes.
Stuart Friedman,
Yes.
Daniel Buxa,
Yes.
Jonathan Peterson,
Yes.
Roland Raffin.
Yes. Motion passes. Next item is a public hearing as well. It's BZA docket number 20-001. Michael Dust requesting developmental standard variances from table 26-6.405.A-3 of the Munster zoning ordinance to exceed the maximum lot coverage for accessory structures and the maximum garage size to construct an additional 3-car garage at 1100 Franlin Parkway. Tom, would you please give a presentation on this agenda item?
Yes, the applicant, Michael Dust of 1100 Franlin Parkway, is requesting 2 variances in order to construct a 3-car garage in his backyard. The first variance is to exceed the number or the size of accessory structures on a site. Our standard is that accessory structures shall not exceed 900 square feet. Mr. Dust is proposing an 816 square foot garage. There's an existing shed on the property, which is 128 square feet. So the combined square footage of accessory structures, if this garage is constructed, would be 944 square feet. So it would exceed the maximum by 44 square feet. The second variance that he's requesting is for additional garage spaces. Currently, our code says that for a residence that's less than 5,000 square feet, the maximum number of car spaces you can have for a garage is 3. So he has an existing attached 2-car garage, and he's requesting a 3-car garage in his backyard, a detached 3-car garage. So he would be exceeding that standard by 2. Dustin, if you wouldn't mind just going down to the site. This is a copy of a plat of survey with the location of the garage kind of drawn in. It's labeled proposed garage. And I've also gone ahead and labeled the existing shed. So you can kind of get a sense of where this is on the lot. You can see that the property fronts on Franlin Parkway, and the proposal is to add the garage in the backyard with an entrance off of Oriole Drive. The petitioner has also provided a sort of a rendering of the proposed garage, which, as you can see, has 1, 2, 1, it's 3-car garage. There's what I was going to say about it. 2 doors. That was actually at the request of the the Board of Zoning Appeals at the preliminary hearing. So I would just say that our code stipulates that a variance can be granted if the petitioner proves that there is a practical difficulty in complying with our standards. Got some photos of the backyard here as well. Kind of shows you how the backyard looks. And so again, this was heard at a preliminary hearing 2 months ago. And at that time, the board simply requested that a rendering of the garage be provided. So again, it's up to the board to determine whether or not the criteria for a variance have been met. So with that, I'll conclude my presentation. I believe Mike Dust, the petitioner, is on the line.
Okay.
I'm here.
Tom, has all the meeting notice been met in regards to public hearing?
Yes, yeah, the advertisements have all been reviewed and determined to be sufficient.
Okay. Well, at this time, I'll open it up to Mr. Dust, and you can give us your presentation on what you're trying to do on this piece of property.
Okay. Mainly, I'm just wanting to build a bigger garage in the backyard. I have a few classic cars, and I'd like them to be stored properly and take them off the street and have a little more room.
And that's it? Okay. Does anyone on the commission have any questions for Mr. Dust?
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Yes, Ms. Mayor.
Mr. Dusk, I think at the last meeting, I had asked you if your intent was to close off the existing garage and make it a living space. I believe you indicated no.
Yes, no, I plan to keep that as a garage.
So right now you have a curb cut on Franlin and on Oriole, and then you would need another curb cut on Oriole for this second garage.
That's correct.
You'd end up with 3 curb cuts.
Yeah.
Okay. BZA, is there any other questions for Mr. Dust, our petitioner? I have a question, Mr. Dust. What do you consider your hardship that you're looking for to be able to increase this amount of space?
I mean, I really didn't consider it a hardship. I bought the property knowing that there was plenty of room here to do it. I've seen the multiple 3-car garages in the neighborhood and on Ridge Road, just other houses that had stuff like this, and that's particularly why I moved back to Munster, figuring that this wouldn't be a major issue.
Well, you've seen 3-car garages. You have not seen 5-car garages, correct?
I've seen 3-car garages. There's one on Ridge Road. There's a house that has a 3-car garage right in front, and then it has another 3-car garage right behind it.
I think that was the one someone bought a piece of property that had the garage already on it and built the house in front of it,
That's correct.
right?
Yes,
Right.
that was
that
about
home garage was
20
there
years
for-
ago.
Right. And then that house came afterward, right?
Right.
You know, looking at it, and I also have several collector cars. I just store them somewhere else. You know, it's I don't know personally as a builder how it's going to look having a separate 3-car garage and another 2-car garage up front. I'm trying to get the feel of it, how it matches the rest of the neighborhood. And I drove around that neighborhood, and I've driven around that neighborhood for 20 years, especially since my kids went to school right across the street. And what I don't want to see is the garage looking the same size as the house. I wish there would be some kind of architectural way that you could have tied the two together and made it look like one structure instead of a pole barn garage out back that's as big as almost the square footage of your house, really, a 1-story, you know? Because you probably have 900 square feet on the first floor, 900 square feet on your second floor, and your garage is about 600 square feet, right?
Right. That's a thing. I didn't want to build a 1-car garage out in the back. I thought it would look kind of even worse just being a 1-car. I thought the 3-car would look nicer. As you know, I'm on a corner, so I have a big lot in the back. I just honestly thought it would look a lot better with the 3-car as opposed to a small garage sitting in the back there.
Right. See, the hardest part is when you try to grant variances, and Mr. Wickland, kind of correct me if I'm wrong, is you try to look at the hardship and also a level of consistency throughout town, right?
Absolutely.
If you start granting 3-car accessory structures with houses that have a 2-car garage already, are we better off just rewriting the ordinance? Because once you pass one, is it hard to say no to future ones down the line?
Yes, it could be argued that it's sets a bad precedent, yes.
Okay.
The current code is that you can have I believe a 4-car garage if you have a 5,000 square foot house, correct?
That's what I read in the earlier.
Say it's a correct, good time.
Yeah,
So I mean, a
that's correct,
5-car garage isn't even allowable at all.
Correct.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Freeman.
you know, in the past, for the years that I've been on the BZA, we've consistently have denied classic car collectors the ability to erect large garage for the purposes of simply storing their cars on their own property. There had to be a hardship significantly imposed before we would grant something. So in terms of precedent, it would be a dangerous move to allow this variance to take place, in my judgment.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. Are there any other comments from the BZA before I open it up to a public hearing? Being none, Tom, I'm not sure if anyone is even on here that's here to speak on this, being a new Zoom meeting platform. But at this time, I'd like to open it up to a public hearing.
If anyone would like to
speak on this,
if anyone would like to speak, I recommend that they try to raise their hand and they can be unmuted.
Tom, just for Zoom amateurs, can you maybe explain how to raise your hand in case someone's on here and they can't figure it out?
Mr. Raffin?
Yes.
This matter, as I recall, and I'm just reviewing the minutes that you approved, I believe Mr. Dusk's petition was set for public hearing at the last BZA meeting. And Mr. Wickling, you may recall, I believe we opened it up for a public hearing at the last meeting. And
I think you did. I think you did.
It's here. So I think we specifically did that in order to avoid having to reopen it for public hearing at this meeting. So, Mr. Chairman, obviously, if you would like to reopen the public hearing as a courtesy to our residents, I think that would be appropriate. But I don't think there's any requirement that you do so. And Mr. Wickling, you can offer your opinion to that effect as well, please.
No, that is correct. It would be discretionary with the chairman as to whether or not he wanted to reopen the public hearing. But I believe you're right, Mr. Peterson. We did have a public hearing at the last meeting, I believe.
Well, that being said, I don't see anyone raising their hands anyways. So
Mr. Nellens is raising his hand, Mr. Graffin.
Well, since I wasn't here at the last meeting and we only have one person raising her hand, I'd be more than happy to hear them speak. Mr. Nellens?
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I'd like to start off with number one. I am a firm believer in allowing more garages only because I don't like people to store things outside their houses. And I also agree that we want to be careful in terms of how the overall appearance is, but I think it's something we need to study in terms of allowing more garages on the houses. When the houses were built here in the 40s and 50s, a lot of the houses had a one-car stall. Now we're having 2 as a standard and 3, and I think some of the large houses in town could very well support a 4 or 5, or some of the properties are big enough that they do have multiple garages. And we do have residents along Ridge Road that have a 2-car garage in front and a 2-car garage in the back. So again, I'm kind of looking at this, it's a corner lot. I think there's a potential for this to be reviewed with the right design could be allowed. That concludes my statement.
Thanks, Mr. Nellens. Does anyone else like to speak on behalf of this petition? Going once, going twice. 3 times, I'll close this public comment and bring it back to the board. BZA, what is your sentiments on this petition?
Well, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Ms. Mayor.
I'm not inclined to deny his petition entirely. I mean, I could probably agree to a 2-car garage if he took out the other driveway on Oriole his property is like a concrete jungle. So, I mean,
Well,
that's
it's
my
basically,
thoughts.
Ms. Mayor, it's gonna be a house, a lot of driveway, a shed, and a big garage.
Right, but if you look at the picture of the corner, right, the one that's on the screen there, I mean, he's got basically kind of like it's like a circle drive. You know, you've got one entrance on Oriole and then another on Franlin, and then you'd have another driveway going into the backyard garage. Also another curb cut on Oriole. So I think that's a bit much.
Well, I'm sure the town would love to get rid of curb cuts on Fran Lynn with the bike path and everything else down there. Anyone else on the commission like to chime in? That being said, do we have a motion? What's the feeling of the board regarding this petition?
Mr. Raffin,
Yes, Mr. Peterson.
I want to reiterate what I stated at the last hearing. I have provided legal representation to the Dust family in the past. So on any motion going forward, I will have to abstain. And I want to announce that.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. A couple questions that I have is, one, I'm not sure if the petitioners met the hardship regarding storing cars on the property. Number two, we have not amended anything in regards in the new zoning ordinance allowing bigger garages. We just spent all that time going through our zoning ordinances. And I think in the future, if we want to look at this and study this more, as Mr. Nellen stated earlier, I think we should look at and really do some thoughts and work studies and even talk to the consultants that we hired. If our intention is to grant bigger garages, we need to have architectural standards, we need to have design elements, we need to have controls in place, in my opinion, before we start granting variances on 5-car garages on 1,800 square foot houses. I think without that in place, it's going to open us up in the future to anyone that would like an extra garage. I mean, I'd put one in tomorrow myself. Yeah, I have a 3-car garage. I have 7 cars, you know, but I would like to have things in place that it's not coming in front of variances, that it's a code that's changed within town, if that's what we're looking to accomplish. That's my opinion.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'm just wondering, you know, if Mr. Dusk, you know, would be willing to go back to the drawing board on this thing and, you know, come back with something that, you know, we might be inclined to approve before we deny it and he's stuck for a year.
Well, basically, I just wanted to build a bigger garage, seeing as how I can build a 1-car in the back, basically in the same spot as, to me, makes the most sense and would be the most architectural looking. I mean, I plan to brick the face of the garage to make it look nicer. I think the way I have it envisioned, I think it'll look better than what is out there right now. I bought this house 2 years ago and I've cleaned it up tremendously, making it look just a lot better. I get compliments from the neighbors all the time. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. And the reason I can't even walk in and out of my garage through my 2 doors, the way the garage was built, because my pickup truck touches the front door and is like half a foot from the rear of the garage because it's an old 20 by 20 garage. It's part of the reason I need a bigger garage in the back.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
if I
Mr.
may
Chairman.
speak, if Mr. Dust would be willing to either continue or withdraw the petition and come back with more detailed architectural drawings to do something that satisfies the sentiment that was expressed tonight, then we might want to consider this variance again or at that time. But based upon what's been submitted thus far, if Mr. Dust wants us to vote on it today, that's his prerogative. But I'm prepared to move to deny the variance as of right now. So I want to express that to Mr. Dust.
What do you consider more, I mean, how much time and money should I invest in this to hear the same answer down the road if that's the case? You know what I mean? This has been a 4-month endeavor, and you know, we've done continuances already, and I'm just trying to move ahead here and figure out what I'm doing with my home.
Well, Mr. Dust, I mean, you already said that that the garage that you have is really not working for you. So, you know, why wouldn't you just close it off and turn it into a living space, and then you could build a 3-car garage?
I honestly, if I did that, the garage would have to go in the same place in the backyard to look the best that it could to my thoughts. And I would think with your guys' you know, knowledge too, the way I'm putting it. And closing off the front would just make the front of the house look weird, as opposed to just having it look normal, and then on the side you'd see another garage. Like my neighbor's house across the street from me, his garage actually would face that garage. So his house kind of looks, it would kind of match his house a little bit also from that.
Mr. Buxa has his hand up.
Mr. Buxa?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just curious if a lift would be an option for the petitioner.
No, I had no intentions of putting in a lift.
I have 2 of them. They work awesome. I mean, they work really well to be able to start the double stack cars, you know?
I mean, I'd have to build the garage pretty big to put 2 lifts in.
Yeah,
I thought we were trying to avoid that.
Probably 12 foot for the bottom head. Depends on how your roof pitch. You probably only have a 412 roof pitch right now, it looks like. So you wouldn't consider taking out the garage door and making it, you know, put windows in the front of the house to make it blend in with your other window that's probably your dining room or front room on that side?
Yeah, that's another front room.
Right. See, I'm still having a hard time, 1, finding a hardship, and 2, going against the ordinance that we have right now, and in good conscience, not being able to approve future ones down the road without any kind of updated zoning ordinance regarding extra garages based on square footage of houses.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. This is kind of what I'm looking for. To build a 1-car in the back, just to me will look stupid. I just thought it'd be more architectural looking. As far as with the 3-car, and I just thought it'd make more sense. Why go through all the trouble of building a little bitty 1-car garage that doesn't fit your needs? I have motorcycles and snowmobiles, and I can't put anything in my garage right now.
What are you doing with the fence around the property if you built this garage? Is all that fence coming down and the fence going up?
I hadn't totally decided. I was planning on redoing the whole fence, but not until the garage was here, obviously.
Yeah. Like some of the fence panels are waving and stuff like that and in and out. And
yeah, I was planning on building the garage, redoing the siding, everything to match, but I don't honestly know if I want to stay here if I can't have my cars and my other stuff here. I mean, I have to repair my snowmobiles and motorcycles, and when I'm in the garage, you know, you can't go somewhere else with all your tools and try to start your motorcycle that's been sitting all winter. You know what I mean?
do you work on any other vehicles besides your own?
No. I mean, occasionally I'll do my sister's brakes or something, but it's been years since I've even done that.
So you don't fix up other cars or paint other cars out of the additional space that you would be doing?
No, I'm not a certified mechanic or anything.
BZA, any thoughts, concerns? Motions?
Mr. Chairman, based upon everything that I've heard in the comments of the petitioner, I might as well propose a motion to deny the petitioner's request for a variance on this matter at this time.
We have a motion to deny the variance. Is there a second?
Mr. Chairman, I second the motion.
We have a motion and a second, Mr. Buxa. Is there any other discussion? Tom, will you call roll?
Sharon Mayer,
Yes.
Stuart Freeman,
Yes.
Daniel Buxa,
Yes.
Jonathan Peterson,
I abstain.
and Chairman Raffin.
Yes. Mr. Dust, the motion was to deny the three-car garage on this property due to the zoning ordinances. We thank you for your time, and we're going to look at within town with the commission to look at updating and studying this garage issue and see what it brings up in the future.
Okay, so now I just have to build a one car, basically where that one's gonna go, was planned to go.
That would be code unless you framed in that garage and you built a three-car in back, Tom, that would meet code, correct?
Provided that it did not exceed the 900 square foot maximum.
So you can build a 900 square foot garage in back if you're removing the two-car garage up front.
No, so
And you can make the door as wide as you want or as tall as you want.
the one-car garage can be constructed. You're still subject to the overall restriction, again, exceeding 900 square feet for all accessory structures. So I can't imagine that a one-car garage would be that large, but you can certainly talk with me or with our chief building inspector to figure out the best way to get a building permit for your one-car garage.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Dust. The next item on the agenda, part of the public hearing process, is BZA 20-002, Community Foundation, Northwest Indiana, requesting developmental standards variances from Table 26-6.405.A-7 to exceed the maximum lot size and reduce the frontage build out in the CD-4.B district from Section 26-6405.0.I.D to exceed the number of required parking spaces by greater than 10%, and from Section 26-6122D.2B to alter a non-conforming sign in order to re-subdivide property and expand a parking lot at 541 Otis Bowen Drive. Tom, I'll turn this over to you.
You did a very good job with that one, Roland. That was a mouthful. This petition was presented at a preliminary hearing 2 months ago and at a public hearing last month. At the time it was tabled because there was a question as there were a number of, there's only 3 members present, and the petitioner was concerned that more members of the board would have liked to hear their presentation. Generally speaking, this Community Foundation of Northwest Indiana purchased the property at 541 Otis Bowen Drive. There's 2 lots that they bought, as well as a portion of a 3rd lot, which is was formerly owned by the Gate Church at 9900 Columbia Avenue. So in the report, you can see that the area in blue is the property that they purchased. On that property was an existing office building and a parking lot on the west side. They are hoping to reuse that building as their system patient financial service office, and due to the nature of their business operations, they needed additional parking. So they're proposing to expand the parking lot, that existing parking lot, to the east. Because the existing parking lot was built right against the lot line there, they need to re-subdivide the property to move that lot line to the east because they can't build over the lot line. So they went before the plan commission to re-subdivide the property. They also sought development plan approval from the plan commission. Both of those were granted last month, but they still need to obtain these a few variances. So there's a table in the report where I've itemized the variances that they're requesting. The first is for maximum lot size. We have a standard that a lot may be a maximum of 180 feet in width, and they are proposing a lot that is 300.87 feet. We have a standard for what's called frontage build out. And what that means is there's a percentage of the width of the lot that needs to be occupied by a building. In other words, you want to have kind of a continuous street wall. So in this district, the standard is 60%, which would be 181 feet. They are proposing 55%, which is 164 feet. We also have in place now a maximum number of parking spaces. So in the old code, there was simply a minimum. But now what we're trying to do is reduce excess parking spaces and asphalt and promote a more efficient use of land. So we have a cap on the number of parking spaces that says we cannot exceed our standard by 10%. So that would, what that does is that sets up a range of acceptable spaces. So for them, they would be permitted 62 to 76 parking spaces. They are proposing a total of 138 spaces. So they're exceeding it by about double. And then finally, there's an existing sign on the property that they are seeking to modify with their, they're using an existing brick monument and they're changing a face out. The sign is 5 feet from the front 5 feet from the front property line, and we require 10 feet. I'm not sure how that sign was installed like that, but it appears to have been installed in violation of the code. But in any case, they're seeking to reuse it rather than demolish it and rebuild a new monument. They're seeking to just reuse it. Those are the handful of variances that they're seeking. I will say that they did go before the plan commission, which reviewed, the landscaping plan and the other plans, and they were approved contingent upon receipt of these variances tonight. At the plan commission meeting, there was one remonstrant, which was the pastor of the Gate Church, who stated that there was some flooding that was occurring on his property, and he wanted to just make the board aware that he was concerned about the flooding. It was discussed and kind of determined that the flooding was not a result of anything that was taking place on the subject property, but was sort of a condition of that Gate Church property.
Thank you, Tom. Tom, is anyone here to speak on behalf of the petitioner?
I would imagine that either Don Toringa or
Mr. Ott?
Dave Oddie would be on the line.
I am here. This is Don Toringa. I'm not sure about Mr. Oddie.
I'm here, Don.
Okay. In regards to what Tom said, I don't think we have much to add. We did get approval from the Plan Commission. We are seeking these variances. Some of these things came with the property, and well, not some of them, but in particular, the sign was there, so we were unaware that it was even an issue. The parking is being added to the building because that's the number of employees, employee parking necessary to service this building. With that being said, if Mr. Roddy would like to add anything more, we're asking for approval of these 4 variances.
Well, it allows us to combine all our patient financial services to one location in order to provide adequate parking for all our staff and patient and visitors. That's why we're looking for the expansion. We don't want to park anybody along the street. The landscaping is nice down there with Hartsfield Village. I think it would be best if we keep all our cars parked off the street. We will extend the sidewalk all the way down to the Gate Church, which is a good addition. And with the new parking lot, we're going to upgrade all the landscaping around the building and all the islands in the back, which will make it much more attractive. We're not requesting any new curb cuts. I think it'll be a nice addition to the community.
Thank you, Mr. Adi. Does any commission members have a question for Mr. Adi or Mr. Taringa?
No.
No one does? Okay. Tom, being a public hearing, we have not opened this, I believe, up to the public yet. So at this time, I'll open this up to public comment. Is anyone from the public here to speak on this petition?
No one has raised their hand.
Well, that being said, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the board. What is the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve all 4 of these variances.
Ms. Mayor makes a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Mr. Chairman, I second. Buxa.
Mr. Buxa seconds. Any discussion? There being no discussion, Tom, would you please call roll?
Sharon Mayer,
Yes.
Stuart Friedman,
Yes.
Daniel Buxa,
Yes.
Jonathan Peterson,
Yes.
Roland Raffin.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Adi and Mr. Taringa.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Be safe. Thank you.
You too.
The next item, there are no findings and facts, so we'll move on to number 8, additional items for discussion and other business. We'll move on to the adoption of rules and procedure. We discussed this a little bit. Is there any other discussion, how we want to proceed with this? Commission?
Can someone explain to me what adopting this is going to mean as far as our meetings go, how it's going to affect our meetings? I think, for the 20 years I've been on the board, we've conducted the meetings basically in accordance with the Roberts rules. So I'm trying to understand what the need is for this formality.
Maybe Mr. Wickland, being our legal counsel, can explain this in greater detail. The rest.
Well, I'll give it a try.
Okay.
First, the statute involving the BZA as well as the Plan Commission contemplates the implementation of rules of procedure. They don't specify Roberts rules or any other type rules. However, I would say, and I don't know, maybe Tom can speak to this, in most cases, and maybe I'm wrong, in most cases in other communities, they have rules, and they're not so much for application on an ongoing day-to-day basis. They're often used or consulted when problems arise, when we don't have the answer. And so when you look to the rules will have the answer. Robert's rules is probably more widely used. Dan Buxa has brought in the American Institute of parliamentarians code of procedure. I've looked at both. I find, and I think maybe perhaps as Dan and others have found, it's a little easier to understand the parliamentary procedure prepared by the American Institute rather than Robert's rules. But that's really it in a nutshell, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. I always thought we were following some of these kind of rules as a meeting. I mean, I followed the Robert's Rules of Order for years at the swim club meetings and different stuff, board meetings, and you know,
Mr. Chairman,
I'm at whatever the pleasure of the board is.
Mr. Chairman, I'm
Yes,
going to
Mr.
make a
Peterson.
motion that we adopt the American Institute of Parliamentary Procedure rules as the rules of our board pursuant to the advice of our board attorney, Mr. Wickley.
So we have a motion to approve. What's it called again? The International.
It's the American Institute of Parliamentarians Standard Code of Parliamentary Procedure.
Okay.
You get all that, Tom, for the record?
We're taping it, so I'll review the tape.
So we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Mr. Chairman, I second Buxa.
Mr. Buxa has a second. Is there any other discussion? If not, Tom, would you please call roll?
Chairman Mayer,
No.
Stuart Friedman,
Yes.
Daniel Buxa,
Yes.
Jonathan Peterson,
Yes.
and Chairman Raffin.
Yes. Motion passes. We'll move on to item B on the additional item of discussion. This is BZA docket 20-003, Greg Gronkowitz. Tom, I won't read the whole thing. I believe that this applicant has withdrawn his petition. Is that correct?
He has requested that his petition be withdrawn. He's going to go back to the drawing board and come up with a garage that actually complies with our code. So he's not seeking a variance anymore.
Great. Thank you. Are there any other items for discussion? That being said, our next regular business meeting will be May 12th, 2020. I'm personally saying a prayer that we can meet face to face, and this is behind us, and we can go about our regular lives and be able to see the people in town face to face. That being said, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Chairman, move to adjourn.
Mr. Buxton makes a motion. To a second.
I second.
Tom, would you call roll since I can't tell all the voices for adjournment, please?
Chairman Mayer,
Yes.
Stuart Friedman,
Yes.
Daniel Buxa,
Yes.
Jonathan Peterson,
Yes.
and Nolan Raffin.
Yes. Thank you all for coming tonight.
Okay,
Yay.
stay safe, everybody.
You too.
All right, folks, this one's going to be a little interesting. Obviously, we watched that BZA meeting, but please, before I call it to order, make sure if you're not talking, hit the mute button on the bottom left of your screen. I'm going to call this meeting of the Munster Plan Commission to order. We're going to stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance. I saw Dustin had a American flag. I thought that's outstanding. Ready for one of those?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Bill.
That was all right. Well, everybody pretend that you have one because I can't stop doing this.
I've got
all
one.
right?
Mr.
I
Toole.
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
to the republic for
which
which
it
it stands,
stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Vanderwood, let's do the roll call, please.
Councilor Kulturitis,
present.
Councilor Gardner,
Present.
Councilor Krulowitsky,
Present.
Stuart Friedman,
Present.
Nolan Raffin,
Here.
Brian Peck,
Present.
and Chairman Baker.
Present. All right, we have a quorum approval of minutes from
March 10th, 2020, which seems like a long time ago. Comments, motions, corrections, what say you?
Mr. Chairman, I move for the acceptance of the minutes, and I must also comment that it's the longest set of minutes I've seen in a long time.
Duly noted. There's a motion. Is there a second?
This is a second from Chuck Gardner.
And there's a second. Any comments? Be there. We're doing roll call in this fancy video world. Go ahead, Mr. Vanderwood.
Councilor Kulturitis,
Yes.
Councilor Gardner,
Yes.
Councilor Tulowitzki,
Yes.
Stuart Friedman,
Yes.
Roland Raffin,
Yes.
Brian Specht,
Yes.
Chairman Baker.
Yes. All right, moving right along. That passes out there forever. Hearing, we have none. Public hearings, PC 19-012, Guy Costanza. Evidently is requesting a continuance or a motion for said. Or Mr. Vanderwood, why don't you explain what's going on?
I received word from Guy Costanza that he felt like it might be better if he waited until we had an in-person meeting to represent his petition for 407, 411 Ridge Road. So he asked that we just continue his petition.
Tom, how many continuances can we get on one of these things, considering he hasn't have a prototype or a concept yet?
That's a good question. I would have to check our zoning ordinance to see if there's a limit. I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay. All right.
But we
Well,
certainly-
go ahead. I'm sorry. Is there somebody that wants to give us a motion for continuance on this?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to continue this item.
I will second that motion.
Excellent. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? 1, 2, 3. Be there none. Mr. Vanderwood.
Councilor Kulturitis,
Yes.
Councilor Gardner,
Yes.
Councilor Tulowitzki,
Yes.
Stuart Friedman,
Yes.
Roland Raffin,
Yes.
Brian Specht,
Yes.
Chairman Baker.
Yes. All right, next up is PC 19-016, David Katona requesting preliminary plat approval for the Fairway addition of 25 lot residential subdivision. A RETA subdivision of the property located at 8105, 8250 Kennedy Drive. Mr. Wood, what have you say on this interesting subject matter?
Project has been seen by the Plan Commission already, so I won't describe it in too great detail, but I will say that there was a public hearing held last month. At that hearing, 16 residents did comment on the proposal. We've included the full comments in the March 10, 2020 minutes. That's why they were so long. But generally speaking, the two concerns that were described were, one, that the new subdivision would cause flooding of adjacent properties, and then concern that the dead end on Oakwood Avenue would be connected to River Drive. We did get additional email comments that were forwarded to us, and then we attached those to the report here. We took a number of actions in response to those comments, and I think the project was tabled to give us time to do that. So I'll just describe what we've done between the March meeting and now. We did televise and jet, so we reviewed the condition and cleaned out the storm sewers on the 8100, 8200 block of Oakwood Avenue. We televised the existing sewers on Castle Drive, on the proposed Castle Drive. What we determined based on that work was that the storm sewers themselves are in good condition. They're in good working condition. The Oakwood Avenue storm drain covers are an older style that's more susceptible to clogging. The Public Works Department indicated that it's a situation that really depends on the residents going out to clear them. To replace those grates is not easy as just pulling one off and putting on another one either. It's actually an expensive proposition. So we also asked our town engineer, Jill DiTomaso, to take a closer look at the stormwater plan, just do an extra review. And she has provided a memo that describes her review of the stormwater system. She's found that it does exceed the capacity of the proposed retention pond, exceeds the minimum standards of our stormwater ordinance, and it's her opinion that the proposed stormwater plan is acceptable. And then another thing we did was we took another look at our standards for cul-de-sacs and dead ends, kind of reviewed them compared to some national standards. What we found was that our standard is kind of on par with other communities and with other agencies. And then finally, there was an informational meeting that was held with residents. It was a Zoom meeting held last week on April 9th. And at that time, we heard a lot of the same concerns that were stated at the public hearing, but there was a lot of kind of robust discussion. And yeah, so that meeting actually has been summarized in a PowerPoint presentation that Councilor Tulowitzki has provided. It's been posted on the agenda page as of about 6:55 this evening.
I also have, if you want to go through it.
Yeah, so we can go through it if you'd like, but in summary, I'll just say that I attached my staff report from last month. The plans that are attached here are unchanged from last month, and the town's recommendation with respect, town staff recommendation with respect to the plans is also unchanged. We found that the plans as presented do comply with our subdivision ordinance. They do comply with our stormwater ordinance. And so we are, as a staff, recommending approval. This time, it may be appropriate for Councilor Tulowitzki to present his findings.
Are you finished with your staff report? And is it going to the counselor as a part of your staff report?
It is.
Yeah, I mean, he submitted it to us with the request that it be placed or that it be presented at the meeting. What it is it's a summary of both the public information meeting that was held last week, as well as some conversations that he has personally had with some of the residents in the area.
I understand what it was, Tom. I read it as well. My question still stands. Is this part of the staff report, or is that something that's coming back to the commission?
I'm presenting it as part of my staff report for informational purposes. It was received from Councilor Tulowitzki.
Okay.
Okay, this time. Yeah, shall I walk us through what we have here? So
briefly, please.
Yes, thank you. No long introduction today, Mr. Baker. So simply, the meeting was held last Thursday on Zoom call, and this is a summary of it. You may move to the next page. Just what was the meeting? So essentially, we held it to promote transparency in the process, give all the residents who were present in the March meeting a chance to fully understand what was discussed in the March meeting, and also to more deeply explore their concerns and have a dialogue across all parties about this development. The recording is publicly available. There's the link here. I believe it's been made publicly available on the town website as well. I'm happy to provide it. The meeting lasted 2 hours and 24 minutes. It was held last Thursday, 7 items on the agenda, and we attended via Zoom as we're doing now. There were 28 people in attendance, and it included presentations from the town by Mr. Vanderwood, Jill DiTomaso, representing town engineer, and then Mr. Toringa, Mr. Katona also gave a chance to speak. With addition, the Plan Commission members who were present, that's myself as a facilitator or moderating, Mr. Gardner and Mr. Baker were there along with Mr. Anderson and Wicklund providing commentary. And then we moderated a conversation or Q&A with public attendees where they asked questions and got responses from those various parties. You can move to the next page. So the first topic was around stormwater management. I really want to acknowledge both Mr. Toringa and Ms. DiTomaso for very thoroughly and even after the meeting addressing other questions that came up from people via email. Everyone, so as Tom has mentioned, the finding around stormwater is that this addition will not adversely affect neighboring properties. Of interest was that the town of Munster's standards for stormwater management exceed civil engineering practices. And then the Fairway addition exceeds the town of Munster standards. So it's a much higher bar for handling rainwater that is applied to this particular development. And that was at the order of Mr. Katona, who's mentioned having been here for the 2008 flood and an intentional design to exceed the standards. And as I mentioned, Toringa Engineering has addressed questions regarding rainwater. The next page is in regards to the dead end and the cul-de-sac, if you're ready to move there.
There's a bit of a lag with my screen share, so.
Okay, no worries. So I can see it now. I think others probably can as well. There's a lot of conversation around traffic flow and a lot of concern and ideation around what might be the result and impact of this development. There was also a petition that Mr. Bassino had sent to everyone. I think of the 28 residences, 26 of them have responded affirmative that they'd like to protect the dead end on Oakwood Avenue. They prefer it stay as is. As was discussed at the meeting and Mr. Vanderwood has mentioned here, 600 foot is the town of Munster standard. The Castle Drive is planned to be 1,200 feet long, so it could not be a cul-de-sac. And Oakwood Avenue, as currently in place, is 1,300 feet. So it's also longer than the standard. So there's been an option that has come up, as I've labeled it here, as an emerging compliant option. It's simply an option where this development could go that also seems to be compliant with the standards of the town. And I'll address the points here. So, and essentially, it would be Castle Drive connecting to Oakwood just as it is planned today. This drawing here is conceptual. It's by no means to scale. The main difference, though, is rather than a roadway from Castle Drive going to the west to connect with White Oak, there would be proposed a walkway, a sort of bike path and walkway that would connect the neighborhood, but not be built for car traffic to go down to these two streets here. So as a result, that would meet the cul-de-sac ordinance for Castle and also would bring Oakwood Drive into compliance to give two modes of entry into that street. The traffic right now, there was something raised that as people travel towards the bridge on Northcott Avenue, they likely go to the farthest place they can go moving eastward. And right now that's White Oak Avenue. So this design wouldn't in effect change any traffic or anything about White Oak Avenue because it would end just as it does today to car traffic. And the thought is that would keep traffic from inducing traffic onto Castle Drive and also onto, therefore, Oakwood Avenue. And let's see, this would also sort of lay the groundwork, the sidewalk, the walkway as an option discussed with the town. The walkway that would be created to connect the neighborhood where River Drive would have connected Castle and White Oak. It could also be extended to Northcott. That would not be part of this development, but it's a design option for the town to consider to make a walkable pathway from Oakwood Avenue, that stub, on over to the east towards Northcott Avenue to better connect the neighborhood. And that sort of framework would lay the groundwork for future development were there a need and desire to connect that road all the way across from Hawthorne over via federal grant or however that would be done. And this is from the residents who have weighed in on this option. It's been overwhelmingly favored to the original option. So that is the discussion around that. If you can go to the next slide with the delay. There's also been a lot of comments and questions and learning on behalf of myself, I suppose, of what is this plan commission? And Mr. Wickland maybe will chime in if I get something wrong here, but I thought it would just be useful to lay out what are the roles of the parties involved in what we're in fact doing right now tonight. So there's a developer, of course, Mr. Katona. His role is to create the plan and eventually do the development. The residents in the remonstrance process is a chance via public hearing for residents to say, this plan infringes upon my legal rights, and therefore I make a remonstrance that it does not meet the minimum required standards. And at that case, the developer would have to redo the design in order to meet the legal requirements. At the point it comes to the plan commission, it is our duty to approve a plan that is meeting the legal requirements, just as you might for a fence, for example. So I just wanted to clarify, and Mr. Wickland, again, you can maybe chime in, that as part of transparency, I want everyone to know what the degrees of freedom are for this body.
No, you said it. You said it well. If it meets legal requirements, the Plan Commission has the obligation to approve it. If it doesn't, then they have to come back or fix it or come in with a new plan. So you said it well.
So was the last. Thank you, Attorney Wickland. This is the last page of this presentation. It was basically to read back out to all of you and say there is an option that Mr. Katona and Mr. Toringa at their pleasure may consider that seems to be compliant also with the legal requirements of the subdivision ordinance. A high-level review of or a conceptual review, let's call it, of the town engineer, Ms. DiTomaso, says she doesn't think that it has there's any reason not to be in compliance. Final approval, of course, would have to be taken upon redoing the drawings, essentially. And so another option on the table could be to make this motion with the contingency that the roadway, as you can see here, that's going towards the top of the screen that currently is planned to connect to White Oak Avenue, be replaced by a walkway, and everything else essentially would remain unchanged in this plan. So that concludes my readout of the meeting last week, other than to say everyone was really great in the energy that they brought and the explanation, Mr. Toringa especially describing all of what is I felt the primary concern of people here, what's going to happen if there's another big flood. And that was very well explained via this process.
Okay, thank you, sir. I bring it back to the commission.
Mr. Baker,
yeah,
if I may, just so because we have more than average attendance at the meeting, so people might not be familiar with how this portion of the meeting goes. A number of people have raised their hand respectfully, and usually there's not an opportunity for public comment, but I thought that because you can't see them as you sit on the dais and acknowledge them, which you usually would in a meeting, you would prefer to know that there are people with their hands raised. So maybe a brief word about how that works mechanically.
Are you telling me that, or are you requesting something?
I think what Dustin is just indicating is that because this is a more regimented format rather than the information session that we held at the last.
Well, let's follow the normal process and go back through the, we just heard from the councilman, from the commission as we brought it back. Is there anybody else on the commission that would like to speak with regards to this came up, or have something before I ask for the developer or the petitioner to speak?
No, I'm good to hear Mr. Katona, Mr. Tringa.
No comment from Chuck Gardner at this time.
No comment from me either.
No comment from Friedman at this time.
Respect is good as well.
Okay, Mr. Katona, Mr. Tringa, anything else that you would like to add?
This is Don Toringa with Toringa Engineering, and I don't have anything else that I would like to add in regards to the engineering. I did speak to Mr. Katona about this. He might want to speak to the approval process, because what we would like, I don't know what that was, but what we would like to get done here is, if this is approved to go through to Oakwood and not connect to White Oak, could that be an approval with a contingency that slight modification be made to the plans, rather than to delay us for another month? With that being
Understood.
said, I'll turn it over to Mr. Katona.
Mr. Katona.
I'm also in favor, but I would like to do what the town recommends, and what I feel is what the town wants. That is exactly what we're going to do.
Okay, thank you. It's my understanding that the last meeting we had on the 10th of March, we had a public discussion period. It was open, everybody spoke, it was closed. This motion, or this petition, was tabled. We had another informational meeting. Mr. Anderson mentions there's people with their hands up and evidently would like to speak again. I think we've checked the box from the legal standpoint of moving through the process. However, I live in this neighborhood as well. I would entertain a motion from any of the other commissioners if they see it important to reopen the public discussion. Be the chairman's one. Of all the $112 I make a quarter, I don't think I want to be put in that position. So I'm looking for a motion if anybody wants to reopen the public discussion portion on this particular petition.
Chairman Baker, I would make that motion. Councilor Tulowitzki.
So the councilman made a motion. Is there a second? Going once, twice, going 3 times, and because this is America, let's go 4. All right, I'm going to close that. So that doesn't pass. So then it comes back to the commission. We're going to go through the process of what's been presented. Any other questions or comments from the folks on the commission? I can't hear anybody.
Mr. Chairman, I've studied this. I've studied the layout, the engineering. I listened to the 2.5-hour presentation that was put up on YouTube that I could watch, so I follow along day after you guys. I like to thank the public on all their comment. I also want to thank the amount of work that Mr. Tringa, Mr. Katona have put into this project, as well as the staff in regards to the obstacles to ensure this property, in my opinion, the main concern, does not hold water in the future and drains properly for the existing lots and the new lots. I want to make sure the town, after these new houses are built, follow through with the proper surveying to double check that the proposed elevations meet the final elevations, so we can ensure that these grades are put in properly after these new homes are constructed. That being said, we're all citizens in town. We all share rights and roadways in town and the burden of traffic and other items in town as a community. Looking at the plan, I think the staff that's gone over this plan have done a good job, and it's my personal recommendation that the roads be connected as the original plan.
Anybody else?
Are we looking for motion for this then?
I'm looking for something.
I move we approve docket number 19016, granting preliminary plat approval for the Fairway Edition 25 lot residential subdivision, a re-subdivision of the property located at 8105 through 8250 Castle Drive.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Mr. Chairman, I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Is some discussion? Hard for me to read this room, Mr. Anderson.
Chairman Baker,
Yes.
I guess I would like to. I've heard what Mr. Katona has said, and I'm not sure that I've heard a preference. He is the petitioner, so it's up to him to, I believe, to say which he thinks is the thing that he wants to build.
We have a motion and a second, Councilman, so we're in discussion on that motion.
No.
Yeah. So if there were a preference other than what the motion is, I might be willing. I mean, I might be inclined to make an amendment to the motion, but that's. Well, I understand what you're saying. This is not a time to hear from the developer. Is that what you mean?
The developer was spoke before we brought it back to the commission, Councilman.
Okay, so just for completion's sake, so that we can consider this, that I've heard from many of the members, I would like to offer an amendment to the motion, and I would amend that.
Wait, hold on a second, yes. Councilman. Mr. Wickland, we have a motion and a second. Can you do an amendment?
Oh, boy. I'm going to say no until action is taken on the prior motion.
Okay.
Is there any other, do you have anything else, Councilman, with regards to the motion and the second?
No, I mean,
okay.
Here was my, I simply wanted to, the amendment would have been to offer the contingency that it not connect to White Oak so that people would have an opportunity to vote that up or down before coming back to this. That was the intention.
Understood.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any comments as it relates to the motion in a second?
Mr. Baker, Chairman
Yes,
Baker.
Sir. Yes, sir.
I mean, as Mr. Tulowitzki showed in his slide, the proposal's been made. It meets all the town requirements and the town code. As an organization and as a commission, I mean, we have a legal right to do what's fair for the developer, who's also a resident in town and adds jobs and is looking to improve the town. So I think Mr. Kulturitis his motion is just fine.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Be there none, Mr. Vanderwood.
Councilor Kulturitis.
Yes.
Councilor Gardner.
Yes.
Councilor Tulowitzki.
As required, yes.
Stuart Friedman.
Yes.
Roland Raffin,
Yes.
Brian Specht,
Yes.
Chairman Baker.
Yes. All right. Next up, thank you very much, everybody, and thank you, Mr. Katona, Mr. Taringa. We look forward on that. Next up on the agenda is PC 20-002 Maple Leaf Crossing, requesting preliminary plat approval, along with PC 20-003 for Maple Leaf Crossing, requesting amendments to the Munster Business Complex. They're requesting a continuance. Mr. Vanderwood.
Yeah, we've received communication from Jay Leeser that he's not ready with the engineering, so he's requested a continuance.
So this would be the same question as with Stanza on whether or not we're still going to be, continuing to do this. If people are uncomfortable with the situation that we're in, which I think that's everybody, how much longer is this going to, be allowed? And you'll look into that as well.
I will look into that. In this instance, it's not a question of being uncomfortable with doing a virtual meeting. It's just simply not being able to have the materials ready. My understanding is that the engineering was begun, but by Taringa, but then he was instructed to stop for the time being. So it's just they don't have the materials ready for the meeting. So that's why they're requesting a continuance.
Understood. Thank you very much. So I guess we're looking for a motion for continuance on these two PC numbers.
So moved.
There's a motion and a second. Tom, what did you get as the motioner?
Kulturitis motioned, Gardner seconded.
Thank you. All right, any discussion on this? Be there none. Mr. Vanderwood.
Councilor Kulturitis?
Yes.
Councilor Gardner?
Yes.
Councilor Tulowitzki? Councilor Tulowitzki?
Sorry about that. Yes.
Stuart Friedman?
Yes.
Roland Raffin?
Yes.
Brian Specht?
Yes.
Chairman Baker?
Yes. All right, next up is the final plat, PC docket 20-004, Stephen Richard Westerberg, requesting final plat approval for the Westerberg addition to the town of Munster. A Westerberg addition to the town of Munster, cool. A one-lot subdivision consolidating lot 224 and 223 in the West Lakes Phase 4 addition, commonly known as 10-125 and 10-127 Norwich Drive. Mr. Vanderwood.
This is a two-lot residential subdivision in West Lakes Phase 4. The intent is to consolidate two lots into a single lot to build a house that wouldn't otherwise fit on a single lot. The plat committee reviewed the preliminary plat last month without public hearing, which is permitted under our subdivision ordinance and state law, and approved the preliminary plat. The petitioner is now seeking final plat approval, and even more so than the Fairway addition, this is essentially a ministerial action. We've reviewed the plat and determined it to be in compliance with all our codes and standards.
Okay. We haven't seen this before, have we?
The Plan Commission has not seen it. Like I said, it went to the Plat Committee for review and approval last month.
I understand. All right, is that it, Tom?
Yeah, that's it.
Any questions or comments from the commission?
My only question is that, Tom, it says in here on the screen, the plat committee may wish to consider, is that really supposed to be a typo? Is that the plan commission will consider this motion tonight?
I believe it's a typo. That it should be, Tom, shouldn't it be the planning commission may wish to consider?
Yes, that is a typo.
Okay,
Yep.
Thank you.
The plat committee formally approved it. I was a member of the plat committee.
Thank you.
Stuart, this is Bill. Can you give me a quick overview of what you guys went through and how you all viewed this?
Yeah, well, it's pretty simple that it was this guy wanted to combine 2 lots into a 1-lot subdivision so he can build a pretty significant house. And he presented this to us in the plat committee.
Just because it's on a kind of a unique angle on that turn?
Right.
So a bigger house, so he has 2 lots with a bigger house on it. That's good for
Hey, Chairman
value of
Baker.
the houses around him, isn't it, Mr. Speck?
Chairman Baker, if you see on that drawing, there's also the Kloss edition where someone else they built a very nice ranch, and right there on it's on Margot. So this is something that has been done in that phase already, and the house that's up there on the Kloss edition is a lovely house that's a large ranch that's very nicely done, and I'm assuming that's what they're looking to do here in the Westerberg edition.
Lovely.
So
Okay.
as a resident of West Lakes, it's a very nice addition to the subdivision.
Thank you. All right, folks, any other statements, comments, motions? What say you?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion.
I would move to grant final plat approval for the Westerberg addition to the town of Munster, a 1-lot subdivision consolidating lots 224 and 223 in West Lakes Phase 4 addition, to be known as, commonly known as 10125 and 10127 Norwich Drive.
Chairman Raffin will second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? 1, 2, 3, 4. Mr.
Chairman Baker,
Vanderwood.
are you going to have 2 addresses?
No, they usually pick one.
Usually select 1.
Okay.
Mr. Vanderwood.
Councilor Kulturitis,
Yes.
Councilor Gardner,
Yes.
Councilor Tulowitzki,
Yes.
Councilor Friedman,
Yes.
Councilor Graffin.
Yes.
Roland Graffin.
Yep, yes.
Brian Specht,
Yes.
Chairman Baker.
Yes. Okay, next up is the findings of facts. Is that what we just did?
Yes. Yes. Looks like it.
Yes.
Okay, so let me read it. Findings of facts, PC 19-016, David Katona requesting preliminary plat approval for the Fairway addition, a 25-lot residential subdivision of the property located at 8105 to 8250 Castle Drive. This is the approval of the finding of the facts. What say you?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve. Chairman Raffin.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? 1, 2, 3, 4. Mr. Vanderwood, we do roll call on this one, please?
Councilor Kulturitis,
Yes.
Councilor Gardner,
Yes.
Councilor Tulowitzki,
Yes.
Stuart Friedman,
Yes.
Roland Raffin,
Yes.
Brian Specht,
Yes.
Chairman Baker.
Yes. Okay, next up, other business, additional items. I'm pausing for dramatic effect. Is there somebody like to speak, Councilman? There none. Outstanding. Next regular scheduled meeting is May 12th, 2020. Let's all hope and pray that it's not on Zoom.
Make a motion to
Is there-
adjourn, Chairman Baker.
Quickly.
Too much transparency on Zoom.
Dustin wants to say something.
Quickly,
Yes.
Chairman Baker, when you had solicited last comment, that was a question directed to the fellow plan commissioners or Mr. Wickland, correct?
Correct. And you.
Okay. Because there's still people with their hand up. I just wanted to let that be known so they don't feel like they haven't had a fair shake to say their piece.
We did a motion for that, didn't we?
You did, and it failed for lack of a second.
Yes. Okay. All right, I'll take, if there's nothing else, is there a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Chairman, I would move to adjourn.
I'll second,
I'll
Mr.
second.
Baker.
Motion is second. Mr. Vanderwood, we got to vote on everything.
Councilor Kulturitis,
Yes.
Councilor Gardner,
Yes.
Councilor Tulowitzki,
Yes.
Stuart Freeman,
Yes.
Roland Raffin,
Yes.
Brian Specht,
Yes.
Chairman Baker.
Yes. All right, thank you very much, folks. Appreciate your time and effort.
Okay, have a good night.
Yeah, everybody stay safe, please.
Everybody stay safe. Good night.